Hello, how are you? Let's start with the information about what's happening in the world. If you're just joining the live stream, leave me a comment, let us know how it sounds. Hopefully everything is fine now. We're connected from Mexico, from the northeast of Mexico, and we're going to talk about what's happening. In this shocking resignation of Joseph Kent, the head of the Counterterrorism Department of the United States, no less. Let's go. What a tremendous letter. We're also going to look at Donald Trump's reaction to this situation, what Trump has said about it. We're also going to see what's happening in this armed conflict and what's going on in the world, what's the reason behind the oil situation, and obviously other news as well. Thank you very much to those who are joining. Please leave your comment and give a like as you arrive. Thank you very much. Let's get into the details. I hope you got the notification right away. Let's hope so. Remember that we are on Telegram, WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, all the social networks, so you can get notifications when we are live on YouTube. First comment, Christy Cran. Greetings. Good morning, Christy. Let's get to the information. What's going on? Well, let's start with this image, an image published by CENTCOM, one of those images declassified by the Pentagon itself. The United States forces continue searching for and destroying Iranian targets that pose a threat, they say. This is part of the infrastructure and also, well, of how they handle information. It's not really about the issue of military infrastructure being affected, and this is continuing. It's clear that the focus right now is that although, well, it's coming up at this moment, it's a very harsh criticism, a criticism that would show discontent from an important sector of the United States intelligence community. Let's discuss what's known about this matter. Now, I'll show you some images that have drawn attention today. For example, this one, which would have been an attack that took place near Baghdad, a wave of large-scale airstrikes that reportedly hit positions of the Al-Nahba militias. This time, the attacks are either from the United States or Israel, it's not clear, but they are attacks against pro-Iranian militias, a paramilitary group backed by Iran that operates near Baghdad. Notice that this same group, well, one of these groups, I'm not exactly sure which one, was reportedly showing a dramatic situation. Where they send a drone, pay attention to this, they send a drone to where the United States Embassy is and show that there are no longer any defense systems in that area. Obviously, this has generated and attracted attention because you wonder, well, what's going on? Is this something that hasn't been activated yet? Or is it going to stay like this? Or what's happening? It's not a topic that we're just going to see in an image right now, no, because they themselves share the image, that militia, by sending this image to social media. And well, that's it. That's the common denominator. Let's move on to other matters, which are also important in what's happening. There's a letter that I want us to read because it's from this person. Look, let's see if we have the image here. His name is Joseph Kent. Yes, this person here. Let's see if it's the same person in this image. Yes, or Joe Kent. No, Joseph Kent. This person is the head of counterterrorism of the United States, and not only has he resigned, but also. And he says that he is pro-Trump, yes, but basically what he claims is that Donald Trump was deceived into going to war. That's basically it. We're going to read the full letter in a moment, but look, just so we know, he lost his wife in a terrorist attack in Syria. Yes, just imagine, yes. He's someone with military experience, with intelligence experience, someone who's very knowledgeable about these topics and, well, has lived through them. Well, now, directly the effects that terrorism can have. So he's someone who, well, actually has photos with Donald Trump himself. Obviously, of course, let's say he's that close to the highest political level in the United States, right? The fact that he lost his wife in a terrorist attack in Syria, just imagine the motivation he has to be against all those regimes and against all those groups. But even so, he is totally against the war. Chief of Counterterrorism. Joseph Kent resigns, and he resigns with a letter that we are going to analyze here in detail. So let's get to the matter. Look, this is the letter. Let's see if we can put it up here. This is the letter. Yes. This is the letter, and Donald Trump has already responded. There is the letter, complete Joseph Kent, National Director of Counterterrorism at the United States Counterterrorism Center. What does the letter say? What is Trump's reaction? What is the reaction then, in that sense, also from the media, right? What are the media reporting about it? Let's discuss the details, but I think this is some of the most interesting news, especially considering that, well, these are people who are deeply involved in the subject. They know exactly how things are and what they observe. Well, they're certain there was deception. That deception came from Israel towards the United States, towards Donald Trump, along with several media outlets that were pushing Trump to make that decision. Let's go into the details of what this letter says, and well, the community's opinion here will be interesting. To begin with, well, let's go to the letter itself and then we'll go to one of the reactions. Yes. The director of the National Counterterrorism Center has resigned and accuses Israeli pressure over the war in Iran. Joseph Ken appears as the National Director of Counterterrorism and states that he has decided to immediately resign from his position. In the document to Donald Trump, he says he can't support war with Iran since he believes Iran isn't an imminent threat to the United States. Pay attention, imminent. Not that it doesn't pose a threat, but that it isn't imminent. And we're going to talk about someone very important from British intelligence who was at the meetings between Iran and the United States over there in Oman. Do you remember? Days before the conflict, there were diplomatic meetings. And there was a very important figure from England. And he says, yes, a negotiation was being achieved. The attacks were not necessary. That revelation is crucial. But going back to the letter, according to the letter, Kent compares this situation to the path that led to the invasion of Iraq. He pointed out that it's the same logic and that it ends up costing thousands of American lives. Well, at that time, it cost thousands of American lives in the Iraq War. And do you think that's where they're headed? This official, well, former official, also mentions the personal element. He says that his wife Shannon died in the war, which was started by a narrative fabricated by Israel, the Syria issue. In the text, he states that he cannot support sending another generation of Americans to die in conflicts that, according to him, do not benefit the people of the United States. The letter ends with a direct message saying that Trump, the president, can still change the country's course or allow it to continue. He calls this strategic decline. That is, their hearts are broken over the security of the United States, and that someone at that level would resign because of that situation. And accusing of deception, that's really harsh. The accusation is serious. According to Ken, high-ranking Israeli officials and media sectors created a disinformation campaign that ended up convincing the White House that Tehran was an immediate risk. The former director maintains that the President of the United States was deceived with manipulated information, generating the idea that a quick attack against Tehran would produce an immediate victory, which was also a mistake. Ken warns that the same pattern that led the United States to the Iraq War is being repeated, with arguments of threat that were later proven to be false. The most striking thing is that Ken was a political ally of Trump himself, who defended the foreign policy doctrine based on avoiding new wars in the Middle East. The former military officer recalled that his wife, a cryptologist in the United States Army, lost her life in an attack in Syria in 2019. And he stated that he cannot support another war that will send more soldiers to lose their lives without clear benefit for the United States. That is the statement made by this person, and there is already a reaction from Trump. Here we have it. Let's listen to it.
His National Director of Counterterrorism, Joe Kent, just resigned today. He said he cannot support his conflict with Iran. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a good guy, but he was weak on security issues, really weak. I didn't know him well, but he seemed like a pretty nice person to me. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's good that he's gone. because he said that Iran wasn't a threat, but Iran was a threat. All the countries realized how dangerous Iran was. The question is whether they wanted to act or not. And many people, many of the greatest military experts, have been saying for years that the presidents should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They would have been if we hadn't carried out the attack, or yes, I'll go a step further, if I hadn't done it. Ending the nuclear deal with Iran, which they gave us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Do you remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there loaded with cash, hundreds of millions of dollars? You would have been very happy. This was wonderful. They said hundreds of millions. People forget that. Someone remembers it, right? You remember it? Hundreds of millions of dollars on a Boeing 757. I think they loaded up two of them, took out the seats, and stuffed them with cash, and it was a huge amount. There wasn't a single bank in Virginia, Maryland, or Washington. That was all the money that was left. They stole all their money, put it in a safe place, and sent it to Iran, almost like a ransom. That won't happen with Trump. And nobody did anything about it. Nobody said anything about it. Can you imagine if I did that? So they've been a threat for a long time, but they've really been a threat. If I hadn't ended the horrible deal that Obama made, the nuclear deal with Iran, you would have had a nuclear war 4 years ago. You would have had a nuclear holocaust, and you would have had it again if we hadn't bombed the site. So when someone is working with us and says they don't think Iran is a threat, we don't want those people because, and there are some people, I guess I would say that, but they're not smart people or they're not clever people. Iran was a tremendous threat, and practically all the NATO nations, and this is the problem if they told me it wasn't a threat and therefore they don't want to help. But when they say it was a threat and that it was a big threat, each and every one of them, I think each and every one of them, I don't know if any of them said it wasn't a threat, but when they say it was a threat, we're not going to help. I think they're very dumb, you know? It's because I could say this, that what's happening in Ukraine, we're probably there. For $400 billion, we don't spend money anymore. They don't buy it and pay the full price. But Biden gave them between $350 and $400 billion in equipment and cash. Someday they'll have to find out about the cash. And you could say that wasn't a threat. You know, we're helping them, so we helped them, and they didn't help us, and I think that's something very bad for NATO. What?
Presidente.
Well, that's the message that Donald Trump gives to say that it's not important, but he actually gave it a lot of importance. And it's also strange that he says he knew he was a weak person, if he knew he was a weak person. Why did he give him the position of Chief of Counterterrorism of the United States? I mean, obviously, well, he's clearly upset about this resignation, and well, it's one of several reactions that we're going to analyze. But let's go to the next report.
The next report. Goodbye. Basically, if they don't stay on the side of the United States, then the future of NATO could be very bad. How do you understand that? How close are we to NATO falling apart?
I think we're not very close to that at all. I mean, we have a situation that we didn't provoke, that we didn't cause at all. This war started without any prior consultation. We have a great responsibility, a very important responsibility on the eastern flank and in the high north, as I mentioned before. Y seguimos comprometidos con eso. But we can't be everywhere in the world, and we can't be in every single place to support a war that we didn't start, that we didn't begin. So it's about finding ways to resolve the situation diplomatically, and this is what we're doing. We remain committed and willing to help at any time.
Well, that's part of the reaction he gives. Boris Pistorius is the Minister of Defense of Germany, not in which, well, lately that's what he's asked about the most, and obviously the answer is the same. We don't want to be dragged into a war. Another message that also draws attention and that, well, I would like to show you here. That's what Zelensky himself says in a live interview.
Have you talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu since the war began? No, we haven't spoken. The Israeli team got in touch with us and said, how about we talk with the Prime Minister? My team said, yes, we're ready.
What will your message be for the Prime Minister when you speak with him?
He has what I need and I have what he needs, so I'm ready for this dialogue. I think it's an important dialogue. Thank you.
Well, that's part of me then. A Zelensky who has been highly sought after by both Israel and the United States. Because of the experience with the Shaheds, because of Ukraine's 4 years of experience being attacked with missiles, well, the Shahed 136 kamikaze drones and other types of Shahed as well, which Russia uses, but Iran manufactures, although now, well, that same design is also produced by Russia. An Iranian factory located in Russia also manufactures these Shaheds. And well, it's part of the reactions and the experience that, in this case, Ukraine could bring to the conflict. Another thing that also draws attention is what Israel itself says in this reaction. Let's listen to what they say.
Larijani was also under sanctions from the United States for the same reason, with a reward of $10 million for his head. Anyway, we did it for free.
They're talking, well, about what happened to Larijani. Let's get into the details. This is incredible. I mean, this image we're about to see is one that was shared recently. In the background, according to reports, there is an agent, let's say, an infiltrator, apparently from Israel, and this was published in Israeli media. Please, no. Recently, a former Netanyahu advisor shared this photo of an Israeli agent who had just returned from Iran, in which, well, he is very close to Larijani. Just imagine that. According to reports, this person has already lost his life. Larijani himself was reportedly one of those responsible for the repression against the population during those protests, which, well, were quite harsh. Well, according to reports, they have eliminated this person right now. There are several details I would like to talk about regarding him. Larijani, no, but today I think it has been the most striking. I mean, along with Joseph Kent's resignation and the death, the elimination of Larijani, well, that's tremendous. Right now, one of the front pages, for example, of the New York Times is precisely about Larijani, because of the importance of the person. Yes. So, They are two characters, obviously tremendous. Now, there's also another character that's already being noticed. It's this other one. Because there are two important characters who would have lost their lives. This is the other one. This is Soleimani, another Soleimani. By the way, his name is Golas, waitress, like that Soleimani who was ordered to be eliminated by Trump a few years ago during Trump's first term. Do you remember? Well, that's another Soleimani. So, would Larijani and Soleimani have been removed? According to the report, Israel would have decided to attack Iranian regime infrastructure in which they would have lost their lives. Well, these two figures, Larijani and Soleimani, would also have died today in an attack. Not many details have been given yet about this issue, but, well, it's an important figure, right? This person was very empowered. The Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, stated that Larijani had lost his life, although Iranian authorities have not yet confirmed his death, or Iran has not confirmed this. But he had basically played the role of a leader of Iran. He is a security chief who was recently seen in images walking on the street. For example, Larijani played a role, by the way. He was a philosopher. Also, Larijani was a philosopher. Besides him, part of his philosophy was, and he advocated for it, because the government, according to their vision, had to be theological. Precisely, that's why they had the position they had. Because, well, it's a theological regime, a regime that is based specifically on a vision of religion. They say that, aside from the ideological aspect, it was also very pragmatic. Larijani played a fundamental role even before the conflict. For example, in politics, regarding the nuclear issue, diplomacy, I mean, the whole topic of how the Iranian perspective on the nuclear issue was managed externally. In other words, how did they want their image to be positioned? He handled that. They say he always had a very measured way of speaking, and he was apparently very strategic. An intellectual, according to those who know him, he was a person very focused on that, on intellectual matters, on philosophy. He liked Kant, for example. This 68-year-old man enjoyed the trust of Ali Khamenei, the former supreme leader. And, well, he had a career in the media, he had a career in the army, and he also had a career as a legislator. In other words, a figure who was always involved in politics and who, well, in the last conflict that happened in 2025. In June, when Israel and the United States attacked Israel towards Tehran, this figure became part of the Supreme National Security Council, a position he had already held for a long time before. And, well, they put him back in that position, so he was obviously a very trusted figure for the political elite. And, well, that's part of what has been discussed, right? Khamenei and Soleimani, two figures. Another Soleimani, I insist, because it's not the same Soleimani, who is already quite well known. But let's say that after Ali Khamenei and the supposed death of Moshtaba, which also hasn't been confirmed, these two would be among the most important figures within Iran's political elite who have lost their lives in this conflict, in this war. Obviously, this is part of the approach that's being taken. Very similar to what happened, for example, with Hezbollah, with that terrorist group that was also dismantled starting from the top of the pyramid, so to speak. And that's how they developed, like a kind of attack to create internal chaos and have, well, a more dismantled, less organized Hezbollah. Although for now, well, it's an organization that is still active, that still attacks from time to time. Not very often, but it does still attack. The northern Israeli area towards Haifa and that whole region. Rockets mostly. So, well, the war part keeps moving forward, obviously, but the most striking thing is that they're meeting with the leaders today. From a message out there, Netanyahu, who assured that the focus is basically to weaken the regime enough so that the people themselves can gain or regain power. We'll see what happens, but look, there's a message we've translated or dubbed from this Netanyahu. Let's see what he says.
This morning we eliminated Ali Larijani. Ali Larijani is the head of the Revolutionary Guard, which is the gang of gangsters that actually runs Iran. Along with him, we also eliminated the commander of the Basij, who are the gangsters' assistants. They spread terror in the streets of Tehran and other cities in Iran against the population. We are also taking action there, acting from the air, with Air Force planes, with drones, and we are also operating there. We are destabilizing this regime in the hope of giving the Iranian people the opportunity to overthrow it. This will not happen all at once, it will not happen easily, but if we persevere in this, we will give them the opportunity to take their destiny into their own hands. At the same time, we are helping our American friends in the Gulf. Yesterday, I spoke extensively with President Trump about this issue. There is cooperation between our air and naval forces. What President Trump and I mean, between our teams, what will we help with? Both in indirect attacks that put enormous pressure on the Iranian regime and in direct actions. There are still many surprises in war strategies. We're not going to reveal all the strategies here, but as I told you, there are many now. Regarding another matter, the most important thing to win a war is what is called tenacity in English and determination in Hebrew. Determination, 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 determination. The determination of the leaders, the determination of the commanders, the determination of the people. We are determined to win, and we will achieve these objectives. I simply ask you to ignore the channels of discouragement. We are achieving historic successes with God's help. We have reached a situation where, after October 7, when we were on the brink of the abyss, now we are a formidable power, almost global, together with our ally, which is the power, the world power, fighting shoulder to shoulder. This is already a huge achievement in the face of all the threats that may come against us. What other country has these capabilities? All of them are being attacked here. Who else has our strength, our alliances, those of the Israel Defense Forces, the Air Force, and a strong people? So stay strong. And I want to tell you that we will also help you with everything related to compensation. I have given instructions to present the plan to you and also to expand it. Also to help the North and also to help whoever needs it, as we did before with the people like a lion, as we did previously during the coronavirus. This time we will do it with even more determination.
Well, that's the message that this Netanyahu gives. In the end, well, everyone presents their own vision. On one side, obviously, we know what Netanyahu's opinion is regarding these individuals. The thing is, what is people's reaction, right? In the end, what is the reaction of the people when someone like this loses their life? Yes, regardless of what has been attacked and how it has been attacked in other matters. And here we have been very critical of how Gaza was attacked. I'm not talking about what this channel says, which is clearly a bot, because it doesn't even put a name. We don't have to be critical of everything, and obviously, well, sometimes bots show up, right? Like this comment saying that this channel promotes Israel and its genocide. Look, excuse me, but I think they don't know the channel. What I do find interesting, and it's clear, is that in Iran, a very different situation was seen. Regarding people's reaction, let's listen to some of the videos that have been circulating. What was the reaction when they found out that Olari Hani himself had lost his life? Well, now protests are like this. Inside the buildings, people either start celebrating, supporting, or criticizing, shouting because they're afraid to protest openly. We must remember the Iranian regime killed 40,000 people. That's also a genocide, by the way, by the Iranian government against its own population, and that also needs to be said. Just as what happened in Gaza has been criticized, the actions of the Iranian government against its own population are also criticized. And it's been terrifying every time one of these leaders dies, especially the head of the Revolutionary Guard, the head of the Basij as well, because obviously people are celebrating. Many families lost their children, their relatives, because of these individuals, and knowing that they have been eliminated. Obviously, it makes them celebrate, it makes them rejoice. They're obviously not going to do it publicly or celebrate in the streets right now. And well, maybe there will be someone, some brave person who does it, but obviously they also risk their life. But from the windows, you can hear people shouting, and well, there are plenty of videos that show that. Now let's move on to other important details as well.
We appreciate that you are waiting for the Parliament's report, but on the other hand, there is a contradiction with your campaign promises. Public opinion by 60, 70, or even 80% supports Princess Aiko. Will you move forward with a legal reform that allows for a female empress, thus accepting a female figure?
And finally, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. At that moment,
It's time, excuse me. Well, as for specifically discussing the imperial succession after the era of Crown Prince Hisahito, the current situation is not mature enough for that, and it could even be considered that this would destabilize the imperial succession. That's why the expert panel's report also points out that at this moment, His Majesty, the current Emperor, His Highness, Crown Prince Akishino, and the members of the next generation are the qualified candidates for the imperial succession. Assuming that His Highness is present in the city center, we must not allow the flow of the imperial succession to be disrupted. That's how the situation stands. In addition, it has been proposed that Princess Mako maintain her status as a member of the imperial family even after her marriage. The government respects this report and believes that this issue should be debated in the Diet so that the government can receive its will and on that basis proceed with the appropriate legislation. I think it's about presenting that proposal.
Well, it's really interesting to see these days a discussion within the Japanese Congress in which the Prime Minister, the first female Prime Minister of Japan, is participating. It's important that she's a woman because she's the first. And because in this case, she's defending that there shouldn't be an empress under the emperor's rules. Regarding the issue of royalty, it has to be the firstborn son, a male, so it's not accepted, even though the Japanese population is asking for flexibility, for that rule to be changed so that the firstborn, in this case a woman, can inherit. Well, Sanada Takahashi, being a woman and prime minister, says that it's not ready. Let's say the issue that would supposedly cause destabilization is the fact that they would put an empress instead of an emperor. In that case, well, this obviously draws attention. Well, these are issues over in Japan that obviously generate mixed opinions and criticism because she's the one saying this. And well, another thing that also draws attention is this moment that was captured of the Shah's son. This happened at an airport. Well, this is in Johannesburg, over there in South Africa. He was received there by some Iranians who brought him some flowers. Well, I imagine, I don't know if they saw him there or whatever. Or if he's giving lectures or a talk, I'm not sure. But anyway, they welcomed him with flowers and some people. That's good. Well, it's also part of what a person is experiencing. Someone who has been or who has attracted a lot of attention, especially lately, because of everything that's happening, obviously, in Iran. Another thing that also draws attention is this comment made by Donald Trump. You know, the typical, almost like letters now, right? The really long posts that Donald Trump makes on his Twitter account. But there are some details I'd like to talk about. Let's go. Because it's a reaction to what's happened with NATO. I mean, NATO has said not to take it out. Neither Germany, France, nor the United Kingdom wants to get involved in the conflict. What they've said is that some of us can help. We can have planes like the Typhoon there in the United Arab Emirates, where it is, in the tourist areas. And protect so that these drones or missiles don't get in. Because they have the defense systems, the planes themselves provide protection and well, they shoot, and that's also part of it. Well, even if they don't say it, it's also about trying to gain experience, right? But without getting into a conflict, right? So they don't want to have a conflict. They've said it over and over again. No, 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 we don't want to, we don't want to. The German Minister of Defense said it again today. No, and that's what they've said in all the countries. Officially, at least, there are no direct NATO attacks towards the east. Iran specifically, no. Well, that being said, the reaction is interesting, isn't it? He says, the United States has been informed by most of our NATO allies that they do not wish to get involved in our military operation against the terrorist regime of Iran in the Middle East, even though almost all countries firmly agree with what we are doing. And that under no circumstances can Iran be allowed to possess nuclear weapons. However, I am not surprised by their decision, since I have always considered that NATO, where we spend hundreds of billions of dollars, says per year, protecting these same countries is a one-way street. We protect them, but they do nothing for us, especially in times of need. Fortunately, we have decimated the Iranian army, their navy, their air force, their anti-aircraft and radar systems. They are gone. And perhaps most importantly, their leaders at practically every level are gone, never to threaten us, our allies in the Middle East, or the world again. Because of this military success, we no longer need or want the assistance of NATO countries. Never, he says. Japan, Australia, and South Korea acted similarly until they stopped wanting to help. So, he says, in fact, speaking as the President of the United States of America, by far the most powerful country in the world, we don't need anyone's help. When it got to the part about the coffee, it really made me laugh. That he's saying this in all caps, right? That's the point. Like, in the end, no, we do not need the help of anyone. There it is. We don't need anyone's help. Well, it's just that things can turn around very quickly. But anyway, that's part of what happens, right? That no one's help is needed, and they put it in capital letters. A topic that can become outdated very quickly, especially considering that it's already starting to show. Of course it has, huh? No, well, let's say from a military point of view, it's obviously far superior, the United States, to the Iranian issue. But on the other hand, it's not about being superior or not. It's about whether they're going to block the Strait of Hormuz or not. Basically, an interesting thing is that today we saw the Navy, but from India. And you might say, wow, India's already helping the United States. But no, it's India. What it did was very simple. It talked to Iran, India, and said, hey, I need oil from the Middle East. And I don't want you to attack me, so I'm going to send a military ship and you don't attack me. And Iran said, go ahead, no problem. So they made an agreement with Iran. The Indian military ship came in and look, this ship was escorting this oil tanker. I think there were 2 plus another oil tanker. So did he use it up until now? I think the smartest way that the state of Hermoso has worked has been the one with India. Neither China nor anyone else has done it. The Indian Navy just went to escort 2x2 oil tankers. We have extracted Veronica Sanchez's country. Esa es la estrategia que, pues bueno, a India le convino y dijo, póngase tárveras. But in the case of whether he was locked up or not, that wasn't guessed either. But it did catch my attention that 2 oil shipments passed this way, and yes, they were protected. Because look, the thing is that the captains of these ships have become very strict, because obviously they are not soldiers. They can't respond or defend themselves at all. They just do their job, which is to move the ship from point A to point B, and that's it, and in the safest and fastest way possible. And they pay me my monthly salary or whatever, but they're not going to risk themselves and their crew for something like that, right? So they say, well, I'll wait. So everyone has said, I'll wait. And they don't want to go through, even though they've been told, no, yes, you can go through because you're from China, but they still don't want to go through. There have been supposed reports that on 2 or 3 occasions, groups of Chinese ships have gone through, especially at the beginning during the first weeks, and then afterwards, apparently 1 or 2 have gone through per day. For India, perhaps the plan is simply to keep sending ships through. Well, 1 or 2 escorted up to a certain point in the ocean, then the escort returns and goes for more. And that's how they're going to do it. And I mean, this is just a verbal agreement, obviously, right? This is just a verbal agreement. Let's move on to other important matters as well. This really draws a lot of attention. Look, this is an image I mentioned at the beginning that's been circulating, in which, according to reports, a drone was involved. This is the green zone where the United States Embassy is, over there in Iran, right? So, the video is a little longer. I'm not going to show the whole thing. But the video goes on for several minutes, circling around the embassy, going around it, and then it leaves, right? So, this video is there, it's there, and they wanted to do this. An Iranian militia managed to do it inside Iraq. Yes, over there in Baghdad, not in Iran, in Iraq, yes. There it is, flying and turning, and all they wanted to show is that at that moment the United States supposedly wouldn't have a defense system there, right? In fact, look, at this point you can even see the United States flag over there, and it gets pretty close to the flag at that point, and that's it. I mean, this breaks with a lot of things people suddenly want to say, like everything is easy now, like I don't need any help, says Trump. When you say this, yes, obviously I insist it's a much more powerful army than Iran's. Please, I don't think anyone in their right mind would think that's me. That's not how it is. That's not the point. The point is the same. Like in the Vietnam War, for example, right? Or in an organized war, well, yes. I mean, if you look, the armies are very different, right? But they bet on different things. I mean, the other day I was watching a report about the battles, and practically all the battles, or almost all the battles in Vietnam, were lost by Viet Cong. I mean, they just lost them. But the next day, after losing that battle, there were other soldiers there, and then they lost it again and again. So, well, they could sustain those losses for years. And politically, I mean, in the United States, that was impossible, right? So, that's the interesting part. Well, the other day, that analyst I mentioned, Robert Pope, that's his name, the one I recommended the video of, this former advisor to the President of the United States, also said it. It's this gentleman. Look, I'll put it on the screen for you in case you want to see it. It's this gentleman. This is the channel, and this is the interviewee. Robert Pope. His name is Robert Pape, former advisor, by the way, to Trump and former advisor to other presidents on the topic of Iran and other issues. No, but he mentions this topic of battles, right? He says that even though the United States won every battle, the war continued because more soldiers wanted to stay on the front lines. In Vietnam and politically within the United States, it was impossible to continue the war because there were too many people against the war. There were too many people against continuing to lose soldiers. Even though you won in the day-to-day battles, in political reality, you were losing. And that's the part that the United States has to or will be calculating right now. Because internally in Israel, I don't see that. I don't see that anger. I mean, I don't see that pressure that, by the way, did exist when Gaza was being attacked. On the issue of Iran, it seems like they don't have as much opposition within Iran, within Israel, but in the United States. And a strong opposition, an opposition that says what they criticize the United States for. So you went to war because you were deceived. You went to war because you were dragged into it. I mean, Netanyahu dragged you into a war, right? Basically, that's the criticism made against him internally. And more high-ranking people are stating and confirming that indeed Netanyahu is the one who led them into the conflict. So, this is really serious, isn't it? And in the face of this, that's why we see the reaction we see within NATO, within Europe, to say that it was unnecessary. And look, as an example, let's see what the United Kingdom Security Advisor says. This individual, let's see if we can put him on screen. Yes, this gentleman. According to reports, Jonathan Powell, the United Kingdom Security Advisor, had been attending the meetings of talks between the United States and Iran in Amman. This security expert, the United Kingdom advisor, was there. They can't tell him whether there was going to be a negotiation or not. He saw that there were negotiations, that it was possible to negotiate with Iran. At least that's what he says. If we go into the details, not what Mr. Powell says, and not the one from the Fed, but this advisor, we don't go into detail. A report has been made by the United Kingdom in which the United Kingdom National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, participated in conversations between the United States and Iran. That is, in Geneva, when the first meetings took place in Geneva and then later in Oman, he was there. He states that during the negotiations, Iran presented a proposal that surprised the Western mediators because it included commitments to limit its nuclear program and reduce tensions with Washington. In other words, he says that what Iran was proposing was more than what the United States wanted, meaning the Iranians' proposal was better than expected. This is what this same gentleman says, right? He says, they were also discussing pausing domestic uranium enrichment for 3 to 5 years, meaning not enriching uranium anymore, even extending it to not enriching uranium for a whole decade. Do you mean, was that the proposal itself or just part of it? Among what was offered was eliminating the storage of highly enriched uranium. To accept the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is precisely in charge of that. Not to ensure the safety of the nuclear issue, right? According to diplomatic sources, the British team considered that the Iranian proposal was not a final agreement, but it was a significant step forward that could serve as a basis for a new round of technical negotiations. This was going to be in Vienna, Austria, the next one, and it is scheduled for March 2nd. But clearly the war begins on the 28th. The presence of this man, Jonathan Powell, they claim that the United Kingdom was not only very involved in the negotiations, but also knows everything perfectly well. That's why the United Kingdom insists it doesn't want to join the war. Because they said the proposal was there, the closeness was there was a possibility to negotiate, and it was not accepted. At least that's what Powell says. Another reality we've seen, and here we've been witnesses, you and I, is that Iran is an expert at pretending to negotiate. So I don't know if Powell says, yes, I think negotiation is viable. Or did he believe the Iranian story? Because we also have to recognize another part. Iranians tend to be like that. I mean, they tend to say, hey, well, here it is. This is what we're negotiating, so let's shake on it. And then 2 or 3 weeks go by, you sit down again and they say, what negotiation are we talking about? I mean, they don't remember what they said last time and they start all over again from scratch. So they keep extending the time, and that time is to grow, to enrich the uranium, whether it's for the nuclear program or just simply to waste time, or who knows what the strategy is. We're probably not in there, so we won't see. What we can know is that the facts, what they show you, is that they claim to negotiate. They give you hope for a negotiation, and at the last minute they extend it and extend it and extend it. So that's also another reality. I mean, to try to find some middle ground between so much chaos and so much different information, well, that's what the advisor says. That's what we've seen in practice. I mean, negotiating with them is extremely complicated. I'm not saying there was no possibility of negotiating. It's just that in reality, that's what we see. I think they could have set a date, a deadline, and said, let's see, for each step. No. If that deadline is broken, then you know they don't want to negotiate and it's all just for show. So, well, the point is that's part of what's happening right now. With this reaction from Powell, with the reaction from Boris Pistorius, the defense minister over there in Germany, with the same... What's the name of the head of counterterrorism? Joseph Kent, not from the United States, with Trump's reaction, and so on and so on. Let's move on to other matters.
Number of countries in the region. I'll repeat it here. France did not choose this war. We are not participating and have adopted a purely defensive position to protect our citizens in support of our allies. Our objectives are clear and have remained unchanged since day one. The first is to protect our citizens, our diplomatic and military facilities, and our interests in the region. The second objective is to stand by all our partners. Here we are with those to whom we are bound by defense agreements, alongside those with whom we often work in the fight against terrorism, security, and regional stability. And therefore we have kept our word and we continue to keep it. We are loyal partners and we have given them very clear support from the beginning, which consists of helping them protect their own population.
Well, that's part of the reaction from this Macron regarding the whole issue of the conflict. But there are reactions and counter-reactions to everything that's happening. The issue is very active, and I would like us to listen to the following. This is Donald Trump's reaction to Macron's statement. Let's listen.
He said in the last hour that he will never join a task force in the Strait of Hormuz until the hostilities end. However, yesterday you said,
Who said that?
Who did President Macron of France say that to? What is your reaction to that, Mr. Bueno?
He'll be out of office very soon, so we'll see, you know. I don't know.
Well, it's just that Donald Trump had spread the idea that France was with them, that they were helping them. Macron says, hold on, wait a minute, buddy. We're not getting into the conflict in any case, we're just defending certain areas, just defending, same as the United Kingdom. Some commentators assumed France was already involved, as several people told me here. They said, hey Pepe, France is already in. I told them that wasn't true. Well, Macron confirmed it today that they're just defending. That's why Trump gets upset and says, well, that's it. Macron will be out soon. He won't be in office much longer, Trump himself says. Another matter is what he himself comments, well, the Oval Office, the White House, regarding what's happening over there in Cuba. Let's listen.
The embargo is codified, but the conclusion is that their economy doesn't work. It's a dysfunctional economy. It's an economy that has survived that revolution, which isn't even a revolution. That thing they have has survived. Thanks to subsidies from the Soviet Union and now from Venezuela, they no longer receive subsidies, so they're in serious trouble and those responsible don't know how to fix it. So they have to put new people in charge.
And the relationship we have with Venezuela has been, I think you could almost say, incredible. Thank you.
Well, that's the reaction regarding the issue of Cuba, especially considering that in recent hours, in recent days, Cuba has been experiencing a series of increasingly serious problems and disturbances. There's also a video circulating of Netanyahu himself and also the United States ambassador to Israel, a controversial figure, by the way, this ambassador. Let's listen to what the Prime Minister has to say.
Know that the President sent me to make sure you're okay?
Yes, Mike, yes, I'm alive.
I checked, and I'm glad to see it, but he wanted to make sure, because, you know, you two get along too well.
I know, and we shake hands with 5 bachelors, but I have to tell you that I'm alive, but I have this card. Your name is on the list of good boys.
Thank you.
And what the President and the United States forces, the armed forces, are doing is incredible. We are very proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them to get rid of these lunatics. They would like to develop nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to all American cities. After we eliminate them, they can't do that. We are exterminating them.
And I love it. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Glad to see you. Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Well, that's part of what the United States ambassador comes with this kid to say, well, yes, he's alive. Here he is. I don't know what. He has 5 fingers, his hand is his own and all that stuff. He shows the list of those he has eliminated, of the leaders he has eliminated or who have been eliminated in this conflict. Well, the list is huge and it's obviously growing, so this conflict here is not the complete list, so to speak. It's just part of what's being shown right now. There it is. Well, there's also Khamenei, there's Dijani, they're not listed there. There's this one from the Vasij, this is Soleimani, another Soleimani. Well, from one of these people, it's the same thing. Yes, Danilo, some of the people we're seeing here on this list have been confirmed, but Iran has not confirmed them. There are some who have been confirmed and some who haven't, especially the more recent ones like Dijani, who still hasn't been confirmed, or this one here on the right either. Soleimani hasn't confirmed it either. At least I don't know right now, as far as I understand. Although Israel has already confirmed it and the United States has also been confirming it. They haven't done it, but normally they take a few more days to confirm this kind of situation, right? This one, I saw a comment somewhere that said, like, since he was a philosopher, Dijani, well, it's not me saying it, his biographers say it, his experts say it. I mean, they're the ones who know him, not me. So, based on those reports, he's a person who has always been around and has been a student of philosophy. Studying philosophy doesn't make you good or bad. I mean, there are very good people who study philosophy and very bad people who study philosophy. That doesn't make sense. Come on, sometimes people confuse the idea that an intellectual has to be good, but that's not true. There are intellectuals who are extremely brutal and bad, and there are intellectuals who are also very good, right? Obviously, that doesn't make you one thing or the other. And this person was known precisely for being a scholar on Kant and other philosophies. I insist, not because it makes you better or worse. Clearly, that's the approach each person personally gives it. Now let's move on to other important matters as well. A huge greeting, by the way, to Blanca Barcelo, to Patri Monsalve, to Carlos, to Candela, to the whole community. Thank you very much for your comment. Francisco Arce, Juan Gabriel, a big greeting. Let's move on to other interesting matters and we'll get to comments in a moment. Billy, how have you been? Aurelio, a big greeting. Antonio Garcia, also a big greeting. Thank you very much for your comments. By the way, is anyone connecting from Cuba, from the eastern part of Cuba? I have the topic of the earthquake that happened yesterday. We talked about it around almost 2 in the morning. We were broadcasting around that time. There isn't much information about it. It's an area that has or suffers from some of these blackouts. We'll see if there are any comments about it. But in the meantime, let's move on to other interesting topics. Well, another attack is being reported. This time it would be against an oil depot in Russia. It's still burning. More than just the attacks, the fact is that it's still burning because we already talked about this attack a couple of days ago. This is like the fires in Oman, for example, the ones in Miratu Salves, which take 3 or 4 days to put out. The fire has been active for several days. Despite this, local authorities stated that the situation is under control. They assure us, but obviously the fires continue according to what has been observed. Another thing that draws attention is this moment when an incident is reported, that is the security camera from a dash cam. At that moment, the car almost flew off. This is a Cybertruck that suddenly took control by itself and started moving toward the cliff. Luckily, it didn't fall. The people inside survived, nothing serious happened to them, but obviously if it had gone over, well, it would have been a completely different story, right? There was a woman with her son who did get some minor injuries as a result of this accident, but it could have been much worse if it had actually gone over. He says this happened in Houston. She was with her baby, and her baby was in a special seat for protection. That's also why nothing happened to the baby. But the car company is being sued for $1 million? Because of this situation, since the car, he says, supposedly in autonomous driving mode caused this incident. Well, it's also a topic that draws attention today. Another matter is this ship. What we're seeing here is a Russian gas carrier called Arctic Metangas, which was reportedly attacked off the coast of Malta. Now, this is full of gas, but it's no longer operational. The ship has been abandoned. They say that's the situation. The winds and the currents themselves could push this ship toward Italy. Yes, so, well, they're investigating. They're thinking about what they're going to do with this ship, which, well, could break apart at any moment. And it's full of gas, according to reports. Well, that's also part of what's happening in that region of the world. Another image and comment that caught people's attention was what Gustavo Petro said. We also talked about it at 2 in the morning in our first broadcast of the day today. We started very early. We talked about this supposed bombing by Ukraine from Ecuador to Colombia. Let's listen to what Petro himself has to say about this topic.
Bombs have appeared, a bomb dropped from a plane. The methods will be thoroughly investigated. Right on the border with Ecuador, confirming my suspicion a bit, but it needs to be thoroughly investigated that we are being bombed from Ecuador and it's not the armed groups. There have already been many explosions, etc. There is already a recording that I think should be made public. We didn't do it, it came because that comes from Ecuador. And there's something strange. I asked Trump to take action to call the president of Ecuador because we don't want to go to war. I'm proud to have gotten Colombia out of the danger of missiles, but they're falling all over the world. Now it's an era of missiles, a death to humanity. Threat after threat, we managed to get Colombia out. They were already falling near our neighbor. But we also don't have to be bombarded with smaller weapons, let's say from the point of view of a missile, but national sovereignty must be respected. So, after the investigation, the technical one, to know exactly, is the bomb active, is it not a dud, is it dangerous? Then we have to make the necessary decisions.
Well, that's part of Petro's reactions on this topic. We'll see what else is said about it. In the meantime, let's move on to other interesting matters. An update on what's happening with this storm that has been going on over there in the United States. A storm that has hit the central part, but also the northeast of the United States, where you can still see strong winds throughout this region. The winter storm caused very dangerous traffic conditions in some regions, as well as thousands of flight cancellations. And this also caused a northerly wind toward Mexico, which right now is still affecting the south-southeast part of the country. And also toward Cuba and Florida, which have also been affected. There have been multiple power outages. This has mainly happened in this area of the Northeast and the Lakes region, where there have been some power outages that are usually resolved within a few hours. The meteorological system reports that large layers of snow and winds have been hitting states in the Northeast, mainly affecting mobility in the area. The Midwest, the upper part of the United States. Between the 15th and today, the 17th, about 60 centimeters of snow have accumulated. As of today, with sustained winds of 65 to 95 kilometers per hour, sustained winds plus gusts that reached up to 133 kilometers per hour. We've also mentioned that here, but anyway, the movements continue and there are still accumulations. Snow records in Wisconsin. One of the most notable facts is that Green Bay, for example, received the most snow in a single day since 1889. Just imagine that, right? So, well, that's also part of what's happening. It's a topic we'll keep updating as the day goes on to see how it develops. But we're about to start spring, and well, winter storms and cold fronts are still continuing. Here, in fact, right now the temperatures are at 15 degrees, for example, here where I am. But we woke up to around 10 or 12 degrees in the morning. That's the temperature we had. Well, I'm wearing a jacket because basically the jackets are already put away. We already assumed that the cold wouldn't come back, but it has returned. Tonight it's going to be 8 degrees where I am. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be cold. Well, it seems that's what's happening. Let's go to the comments. Thank you very much to everyone in the community who is here live, and to those watching later. Thank you very much. Also, let's go to the details of what's happening, but not in the chat. What is the chat saying right now? Let's go there. Hey, greetings. How have you been, Gloria? Very good. How have you been doing? Let's take the chat here in this part. Gloria says, yesterday, from the afternoon and part of the night, she didn't stop crying. In Puebla, it was hot, and yesterday it was cloudy in the morning, and around 2 in the afternoon it got cloudy and the temperature dropped, and today it was the same in the morning. Greetings, Gloria. How have you been? She says spring is strange. Greetings to Nicole, Franco, and Fabricio. How are you all? A big greeting. Thank you for joining us, Nico. Also a big greeting, Jose, my namesake, Jose Zarate. What's up? How have you all been over there? Greetings to your family. Francisco, Arce, Gabriel, very good. Who else is here? Live, leave your comment. Gabriel, Rulox, Monica, what's up? Thank you very much. Same to you, TKML Master. Greetings, says one of those here in Tijuana. Autonomous cars. I don't know if it would be a serious case, he says. Greetings, how have you been? Thanks also, by the way, for that super chat. Greetings all the way to Tijuana. Big shout out from KL Master. How are you doing? Yes, honestly, right now, I mean, at this moment, honestly, well, yes. Wow, a self-driving car, maybe later on, not right now, really. Once those cars are more experienced, I don't doubt that the statistics will be in their favor. No, but it's kind of complicated suddenly just letting yourself go like that, just being taken. Not because of the self-driving cars. Yeah, it's kind of intense. Greetings. Blanca, like Blanca says she's afraid of self-driving cars. I know. It's something to think about, honestly. Thank you. Yeah, Carlos, how have you been? Very good, Patrick. How are you? How have you been? Greetings. Very good, Perla. What's up, Perla? Lucia too, Lucia. Medina says. There's no audio, no. Yes, there is audio. Yes, I'm monitoring here. I can hear here. Listen, it's because I have the output. That's all. So, well, I can quickly tell if there's no audio, he says. That Juana Trey, always dreaming, he says. What happened to Candela? Tino? He says, but Trump needed to make war, and he had an eye for it. That little fool, he says, it's not that he says, it's not he knew, he didn't know when to take advantage of the opportunity. Who also can't stop being at war to avoid the courts. Who also has a lot of legal troubles inside Israel. Greetings, Tino. How have you been? He says, I had never heard a man more ignorant than the host of this show. Well, Juan Gabriel, that says a lot about you, my friend. That comment, it speaks perfectly about you. I send you a big greeting. Hope you're doing well. Greetings. I love the comment. It's good. He just exposes himself. It's amazing. Candela says greetings. A few days ago, I was with some Israelis. They said that the situation in Israel was very sad because crimes were being committed. And I just looked at them in silence and kept eating. I just looked in silence as I started eating. Well, greetings, Candela. How have you been? Very good. Antonio Garcia says the paperwork and the meetings. I could have said a lot, but the fact is that for Islam, it's okay to lie in the name of what it says. I just saw their dumb faces. Will Iran be like Russia? Says Antonio Garcia. Greetings, says Billy Hernandez in Los Pepes. There are rumors that Europe is going to send warships, but it will only do so to protect the Strait of Hormuz, says Billy Hernandez. Yes, well, those are just rumors, nothing more, because it's not going to happen. And if it does, it would have to be with an agreement with Iran. I mean, that area is very complicated, so for a country that's not involved to go in there would be difficult. It's not that it's impossible, but at this point, especially right now, it looks complicated. They could get closer to the Mediterranean, which in fact Spain has already sent a warship over there towards Cyprus. I'm not sure if it will stay there long, move back and forth or what. This needs to be checked later. But for now, that doesn't seem very likely. But if it happens, we'll talk about it here, right? We'll see Iranian invisible minds, he says. How have you been? Greetings, Francisco. More than invisible, they're actually visible. They have a structure and are clearly visible. The issue is that removing them is a real risk. You need to have minesweepers. Minesweepers. The countries with the most minesweepers are in Europe, and right now Europe doesn't want to get involved in the issue. So, what could maybe be negotiated at some point is for the minesweepers to come in. But protected by United States warships, which also seems difficult because right now the warships don't want to go in there. They would basically be making themselves a target, so that part doesn't seem possible right now. What they've said at the Pentagon is that they're going to try. I mean, they're going to hold their position, but a little further back, and from there they can attack perfectly well. They're not going to expose themselves any more than necessary. Wouldn't it be like a strategic mistake, not in the sense from the point of view of war, I mean, says Maria Elena. Good morning, she says, good morning, rain in Tehuacan, greetings, how have you been, Maria? Says Aurelio. From an autonomous one to a horse, better a horse, says Aurelio. Greetings, Aurelio. You know, I actually don't agree with you on that one. I mean, if you give me both options, don't ask yourself, because you'll probably say a horse too, but not me. In that case, I definitely prefer an autonomous one. In that case, this one. Horses are pretty random too, says Maria Elena, but well, it's because I know them, right? No, not this one, but anyway, she says, well, good morning. How have you been, Maria Elena? What's up? Gloria Francisco says KML went too far? Juan Garcia. No, well, well, it's fine. There's going to be some criticism because maybe today nobody's perfect. You can make mistakes, obviously, right? But you make your argument, right? And you know what? You didn't make a mistake, but you're not correct. Give me your argument and we'll analyze it since we're all here to learn. No, it's not that one knows everything about the post. No, right, obviously. No, right, it's logical. But I love this because they comment that and then they don't even give any arguments or anything. No, well, they just want attention. They want to... He already got his attention for a few seconds and well, now he's happy, says Omar. Greetings, says an autonomous or a capybara, says wow, says the capybara wins. Is this Omar Hernandez? Greetings all the way to New York. How have you been, Fernando? How have you been? Greetings, Systemic Ozone 2. Huge greeting. What's up? How have you been? Systemic Ozone Lily, how have you been? What's up? Good morning, Dino, he says, and that he only has 4 others left in the area. Wait, what, Dino? This one says from the middle of the world, how have you been, Fernando? And what's up? Are we sweeping? Colombia? He says Colombia. What do you know about that, Fernando? What do you think? Could it be not? What if... I think that if a capybara tells me the same thing as before said, that says the same thing as before. He said that since 2020 he was pressuring Trump and that Iran was a threat. He even tried, he says, to attack Christmas. Relax, Antonio. Let's see. Say it, please. Greetings. How have you been? He says. This weather is the best. Seriously, this vineyard is really cool. It's really cool. I love that this spring has been different from others. I mean, this first entrance, because suddenly here, like I say, we're already used to it, but it's kind of rough because it comes in all of a sudden. Or you realize that suddenly you're... And March comes in and suddenly out of nowhere summer starts. Basically, you skip spring and summer comes in, almost 40 degrees, and it just doesn't stop, right? And you say, well, it is what it is. And this time there have been days with like 37 degrees. It's like, here it comes, here comes summer. And then another day it's 30, 25, like it softens up, right? And then again 30, and that's how it's been. So has it been nice? Because you kind of get used to it little by little, but it's coming, the heat is coming, right? But well, that's another topic, he says. Let's hope the war ends soon. But I don't think so, he says. It's what's most convenient for Trump right now. He wanted the price of oil to go up, and I think with the war it seems very intentional, says Kale Master, says Antonio in another post. Biden and Kamala helped Iran by financing them, and with Trump it was contained, and now he says that Iran is not a threat, he says. Yeah, I mean, no, well, I mean, he's always been playing with ideas, many of them completely false. And, well, it's just that, you know, we have to remember Trump is not a strategist, Trump is a politician, right? I mean, in any case, well, he does whatever works for him politically, but not militarily. He's not even thinking about, I mean, he's thinking about the elections, he's thinking about those things. And also about having something else that draws attention. And that it's not the internal issues which right now have caused him a lot of trouble, a lot of internal problems. This isn't working. Obviously, the whole unidentified flying object issue, where they didn't reveal anything at all, they said, we order that all the information about the unidentified flying object topic be released. Absolutely, but absolutely nothing about the topic. They definitely have interesting things and information to discuss, but nothing, absolutely nothing. Up until now, at least, no, but well, right now, oil is in charge. By the way, didn't we agree that we were going to check the number? Well, look, yes, it's still around $100. I mean, really, oil. Let's see. Where is it? There it is, $100.15, $100.15. The idea, with all the reserve withdrawals that happened, was to bring it down to around the 80s. Yesterday, it looked like they were going to make it and things were moving forward. I said maybe they'll do it, right? And they lower the price with the reserves and get back to the 80s again. But, well, today what it shows is that there's more nervousness than anything else. So, let me take a look at it here in detail. Let's see if we can get a more complete graph. Because, I mean, the rise, well, yes, it's there. This is the rise. Look, it's complete. There it is, $100. With 2 cents right now, Well, we'll see if they manage to lower the price, but for now, it's extremely high. And it seems that, well, it doesn't just seem, the trend is upward, not downward. It's very, very, very clear. By the way, Bitcoin is already at $74,000. By the way, gold is already getting close to that. I mean, it's kind of breaking, but downward gold, right? I mean, gold already, it's not surprising anymore, right? That draws attention, he says. He wasn't even a politician, just got into politics out of anger at Obama. Well, yeah, not even a politician, but let's say his focus has been more on politics than on strategy, really, right? Greetings, Eli Sherman, Dino Argentino, Gloria. Greetings, very good homeland, the whole community. Well, have an excellent day. We'll be back later with another update. So have an excellent, excellent day. It's very cool over here. I hope the weather is just as nice where you are. A huge greeting to the whole community as well. See you in a little while. See you later.